Every single league, my number one goal is to make as much currency as possible and to buy Mageblood during first week of a league, which is something I succeeded with every league since Mageblood came out, and during the last league I was able to buy it on the day 5. So hopefully this time around it's gonna happen even sooner. With that in mind, in today's video I want to talk about what is my plan for the upcoming league start. But keep in mind, this is going to be mostly a guideline that I am going to follow, not necessarily 100% what I am exactly going to do. That is going to depend on RNG and the economy. So let's start with what is going to be my league starter build and why. Last league I started with Armageddon brand and I plan to transition it into something else, but I liked it so much that I kept playing it for a few days, even though I had no idea how to progress it and I also haven't practiced it. So this time around I'm gonna play it again, but with more preparation, and eventually I'm probably going to respec it into the Stormbrand build, but that is going to depend on what I'm going to farm. And I'm not gonna talk about the build too much in this video because I'm planning to make a separate one fully dedicated to the build. The way I like to prepare my league start is I always choose a strategy first, and then I choose a build that fits that strategy perfectly, and my plan this time around is to push to red maps as fast as possible. Coincidentally, Armageddon brand right now is one of the fastest builds to finish the campaign with and to rush to the red maps, which is why it is a perfect build for me. I know that I probably shouldn't do it, but I'm still planning to do a little bit of heisting when I reach level 60, so that I can buy starting gear for mapping like Tabula Rasa, but I don't want to do it for more than 30 minutes to 1 hour. And the way I like to farm Heist is I start to do it at level 60, I go to Rogue Harbor and I buy lockpicking and demolition contracts from Wakano. The reason why I start doing it at level 60 is because that's the point when you can start doing Chaos Recipe. In case you don't know what it is, you can basically sell to the vendor full set of rare unidentified items that are item level between 60 to 75 for 2 Chaos Orbs. That's why I do mostly demolition and lockpicking contracts, because they drop a lot of currency and jewelry items which are needed for Chaos Recipe. Then, after each time I level up, I also check Wakano for more contracts to buy, and if I don't level up from running contracts, I just go back to progressing the campaign. This way I usually am done with Heist around level 65 to 67, and I have between 50 to 100 Chaos. Then I'm planning to finish the campaign, which should take me in total around 5 hours, depending on how much time I'm going to spend in Heist. So when I'm going to start mapping, I'm going to fully focus on progressing the map tiers, and to do that I'm going to use this Atlas passive tree. First thing I'm going to go for is this new keystone called All Hands, which gives very high chance for masters to appear in maps, and at this point any master is pretty good except for Nico, because they add additional monsters to maps, which means higher chance to drop more maps. But of course I'm not sure if it's going to be worth it, so I will have to test it and decide if I want to keep using it. After that I am going to rush all the way up to the Wandering Path and take most of the small passive points, which give 2% chance to drop a connected map from one monster in a map. With Wandering Path it is increased to 4% per point, which means you need 25 of them for a 100% chance to drop a map, which most of the time is going to be a higher tier map because it has to be a connected map. After that I'm gonna go for Stream of Consciousness for additional league mechanics in maps, and then slowly progress towards the left side of the tree. I'm not planning to have that many points when I reach tier 14s to tier 16s, because I'm going to rush high tier maps, so I'm not going to have that many points. At this point I'm going to kill Searing Exarch and Eater of Worlds, which is going to give me 2 Void Stones, which are going to upgrade most of my maps to between tier 14s and 16s, which means that at that point I can farm more Atlas passives by doing high tier maps instead of white and yellow maps, which is what you would normally do. Now let's talk about what's so important about rushing to red maps instead of just progressing my Atlas passives in whites or yellows. Well, first of all, I'm going to drop red maps, which early on can be pretty expensive, so I can start making my money just from selling maps. On top of that, tier 14 plus can drop Guardian maps from map bosses, which are very expensive early on. After I get a decent amount of map pool, I'm going to spec out of Wandering Path and take the red influence nodes, and that's another thing that is going to make me a lot of money because red altars gives a lot of chaos orbs, awakened sextants, and eldritch currency as rewards. At this point, I'm going to keep things very vague because things that I'm going to spend my Atlas passives on and what I'm going to farm is going to depend largely on the economy. What I can tell you though is that I'm probably not going to farm essences because they can be pretty hard in red maps and also time consuming. Also, I'm probably going to skip the Ancestor League mechanic because, to be honest, I can just save all of my silver coins and then at some point just do all of these saved up encounters in a row. But one of the reasons why I am planning to play Armageddon's brand and possibly respeccing into Stormbrand is because it looks like both of these builds should be pretty good at farming league mechanics. So if it's going to end up being very profitable, I might just buy as many silver coins as I can and just farm trials. And similarly, Sanctums should also be pretty easy for my build, so I might try to farm them too. If I stick to mapping, I might farm Bestiary, Harvest or Expedition. Like I said, it all depends on the economy. It's also very important to recognize what your build is not good at farming, so even if economy supports farming it, you don't just jump on the ship and then regret it later. So with my build, two league mechanics that I'm definitely going to avoid are Legion and Breach, because they require a huge AoE to clear them efficiently, which is something that Armageddon brand is missing. Maybe later on though, if I'm going to respec into Stormbrand. One last thing I want to mention is that if all of these strategies fail, there is still one last thing that I can always rely on, which is my trusted backup plan called logbooks. And it probably would be Black Scythe logbooks. They are very simple to farm, and if you know which remnants to avoid, they are also pretty easy. A few times in the past I made some mistake when it comes to choosing strategy early on, and I would swap to farming logbooks, and I would still be able to buy Mageblood during week 1. The reason why I would prefer to not farm them though, and why it is my last resort, is because I farmed a ton of them in the past and they can get pretty boring, so if I can avoid farming them, that is what I am going to do. I know that I kept a lot of things vague in here, and this isn't a video where I tell you exactly the steps I'm going to follow to get guaranteed Mageblood during week 1, but unfortunately that's not how the things work. Especially if you are a content creator and you make a video about your strategy. I just prefer to have more options and take advantage of the market if I notice something that is looking very good to farm. I could just tell you that I'm 100% going to farm, let's say, Sanctums, but what if a lot of people go for it and each Sanctum tomes goes for, let's say, between 1 and 2 divines and you barely make any profit from it? You would just say that it was a bait strategy. So I prefer to have a lot of options and go with the flow and always have a backup plan. Like I said earlier, my next video is going to be about my League Starter build, so if you are interested in it, make sure to check it out. But that's going to be it for this video. Thanks for watching and see you next time.